Hi, Jake. Thank you so much for joining us here at All About Balance for a little chat about barefoot science insoles.
Hi, Stuart. Great. Always good to speak to you. Thanks for having me.
That's excellent. Now, Jake, I know what you do. You're a neuro-chiropractor, but just for the purposes of this chat, could you explain a little bit more widely what that means and what that is and how it differs from other forms of chiropractic?
Yeah, absolutely. So in chiropractic, we have different areas of special interest. So the popular ones would be obviously sports, pediatrics, and neurology. So after graduating, I did some postgraduate diplomas in neurology, and I'm now doing a master's in musculoskeletal neuroscience with a focus on movement, balance, posture, and pain. So trying to understand, how does your nervous system control movement, balance, posture, and pain? And a big part of that is trying to prevent falls. So trying to, we know that a third of people over the age of 60 will fall each year. Half of all 80-year-olds fall each year. So it's one of the leading causes of injury in our society. So that's something I find is quite a passionate thing for me, is trying to make sure these people can stay upright and not get injured by falling over. And that's probably how you and I connected in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I mean, I was lucky enough to have barefoot science sort of approved, if you like, as a product by the British Chiropractic Association, and then invited to go and exhibit at their annual conference last year. Obviously, this year's was all a bit different. And delighted, very delighted, in fact, to see that you were one of the speakers there. Hadn't come across you prior to that, but your title, I believe, was "Bad Balance, Bad Back."
Yeah, absolutely.
And I rubbed my hands with glee at that prospect. Yeah. So you've just mentioned some of those stats for the numbers of falls, but I seem to remember the cost to the NHS is horrendous, isn't it, for falls and the consequences?
Yeah, it really is. So I think after car crashes, falls are like the second leading cause of accidental death and injury in our society, which is massive. Think of if you think of that, it's easy sometimes to think of statistics as just a number. So a third of all people over 60, whatever that means. But if you think of everybody who's over the age of 60, friends, family, clients, patients, I think 33% of those will fall over this year, and hopefully they get away with a bump or a bruise, or hopefully nothing. They can just laugh about it. But a significant portion will end up with something more. We know that if you're over the age of 60 and you're hospitalized, there's a 50% chance that it was due to a fall. Well, I mean, that's a crazy statistic, right? But out of all the things that can get you, all the things that can hurt you, if you're actually hospitalized, you have to spend time in hospital, there's a 50% chance it was related to a fall. That's a crazy statistic. And the number, in terms of the cost of the NHS, must be huge. And that's one of the reasons that it's one of the NHS's key areas they're focusing on. So they have a few different areas to try and prevent injury and improve health, and falls. Fall prevention is one of their key ones.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I through the barefoot science insoles, obviously I've got more interested in falls, but prior to that, I've been doing sports therapy practice for nearly 29 years. And I'd seen lots of people with falls, but I hadn't made the connections that you were pointing out in your presentation about the ages that people fall and the type of falls, and the type of injuries that they gain for those. So perhaps I remember you were giving some different types of injuries that would occur for different age groups because of certain reasons. So maybe you could expand on that.
Absolutely. So so let's say over 60, the classic one would be like a upper limb injury. So classic would be a broken wrist, because you put your arms out, which is good. We want that postural reflex. So you trip over something, and that's classically how people fall, is they catch their foot on something, stepping over the dog, out of the shower, up into the house, something like that, or they slip on snow, ice, or mud. Hopefully they get their hands out, but because they don't control as they hit the floor, classically broken wrist or maybe an injured shoulder. As you get older, so now we're looking over 70, those postural reflexes start to fail. They're not quite as brisk as they used to be. So then we've got a much higher chance of fracturing a hip or having a head injury. And hip fractures in the elderly are a terrible outcome, because it's that period of inactivity causes muscle weakness. It causes you get muscle atrophy, you get bone wastage, and they become dependent on care. So we know that the chances of getting better after you break a hip is not a great one. But if you hit your head, that's no good either, because the loss of your brain is geared up to processing balance. So you fall and hit your head once, and unfortunately, most people with concussion, we see changes in balance. So you're then falling again. And unfortunately, with my family, that was kind of the downward trend for my grandmother, is that she fell, hit her head once, and then from there hit her head again, and then that slowly, those repetitive head injuries slowly turned into a cognitive decline. And that's not an uncommon story. So if we've got any kind of technology or any kind of training advice or equipment we can use to try and prevent that first fall, that can maybe change people's, their long-term outcomes, right? That can literally affect their longevity. So that's why I feel so passionate about it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I remember doing a little bit of research on what falls prevention schemes as such there are or were available in the NHS, and I found a couple of ways that they were trying to address things. But what struck me was that it was largely dependent on getting people to exercise 2-3 times a week and keep that going over quite a protracted period of time. So other than that, there was lots of advice on prevent or trying to mitigate or prevent falls by moving low coffee tables or rugs and such like, so they wouldn't trip over things, handles in the shower and so on. But when I was trying to look at how to prevent the falls, actually from a physical point of view, strengthening exercises and such like were fairly clear and obvious, but getting people to do them regularly was the problem. Now, one of the things I really like about the insoles, and it'd be great to get your view on this, is that the point about them is that when people are wearing them, and they're designed specifically, they were designed, I think by a chiropractor some 20 years ago in Canada to specifically improve balance. And I don't know, because I don't know the chap, but I'm guessing he was thinking along the same lines as you. So he designed these insoles specifically to improve balance. And that's, the fact is, every single step that somebody takes with that stimulation that the insoles provide, it does improve balance. I mean, so from your experience, I know you've brilliantly taken a stock of the insoles and you've been offering them to your patients. What sort of responses have you seen and improvements in balance have you seen?
So the patients I'm using them a lot with are, so the human brain is very visual. So if you were to draw, if you've never seen a picture of yourself, or you never looked in the mirror and asked you to draw your face, what does it look like? You would draw 2 huge eyes and a very big mouth, because quite simply we see so much. So we think we have these huge eyes when actually they don't make up that much of our face at all. That information goes all over our brain. Balance comes from your eyes, your ears, and the feedback from your body, from your muscles, and in particular your feet and your neck. A lot of people who have problems with balance have become more visual. So they rely on vision for their balance. And that's an okay short-term strategy, but it's not good in the long term. And to compound that, a lot of us have shoes with really lovely thick heels, and you can't feel the floor. So if you would take your shoes off and go for a walk, let's just say from your living room out into the street, you would feel the difference between maybe a carpet, a hardwood floor, the doormat. You'd feel the cold of the stones outside. You'd feel whether they were wet, whether they were dry, hot, cold. We've got a gravel driveway. You'd feel all those little stones. So you'd be so aware of the sensation at the bottom of your feet. But when you wear shoes, you don't notice about any of that, do you? It's all just one consistent feeling, because the shoe is taking all the pressure. And depending on the shoe, it may not be doing you any services in the first place. A lot of shoes are made purely for fashion, with no regards to function at all. So where I like to use the insoles is that every step you take, sounds like I'm about to burst into song there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but every step you take, you're getting that little bit of feedback, a little bit of proprioception from your foot, and you feel it, don't you? Especially when you change levels. If you go, say, from level 1 to level 2, you are very aware, certainly for well, I find for a few weeks, every step I take, I'm like, oh, there's something, sounds silly, but something in my shoe. Now it's not uncomfortable, but that's the feedback your brain is used to having when you were running across the open plains chasing an animal. That's what we have to have. And so what's happening from my thought process is every step they're getting a bit more proprioception. They're engaging with that proprioception because they're feeling, there's my foot, and you're helping reweight the way your brain uses sensation. So it's not just relying on vision that is prone to optic illusion, tricks of light, color contrast, and all the other stuff in our world. And actually you're tuning into what does my body feel like it's doing. And I found that's been helpful for me. My mum had a terrible ankle break, I guess it was 10 years ago now, and she just really as bad as ankle breaks can get. And we put those insoles in, and you know, within a week she was ringing me saying how great her ankle was feeling, and she could actually walk without pain for the first time in years, which is fantastic. I've been using a lot with chronic dizziness patients who have had, let's say, like an ear infection that never recovered. So concussion patients whose balance has never got right. So it's a nice one because you can kind of just set it in their shoe, make sure that they go up through the levels at regular intervals, and know that regardless of their condition, pretty much they're going to be better off for it.
Yeah, that last point you made there about the going up through the levels is really, really important. It was quite funny. I was speaking to a young woman who wasn't having falls, but she was having a back problem. And I saw her in July last year. And then I just did a little bit of a film about her consequences of the insoles and so on, which massively helped her back problem. But I discovered she's still, it was about 12 months, 13 months on, was still in level 1. So I said, whoa, what are you doing? And she felt that just because her back had got better and she was able to train, she's a very fit young woman, does CrossFit, she plays tennis, she's a sports coach. And I said to her, well, the interesting thing is that, you know, there is quite a bit of research that's come out over the last few years, certainly not going back the 20 years since these were invented, but in the last 2 or 3 years, looking at the effect of an external stimulus on the sole of the foot. And interestingly, the product that was used was just a dimpled insole. And they found that immediately it changed the amount of stimulus, it improved balance. But then after a couple of weeks, that plateaued. And then if anything started to dip, and at 12 weeks, there was absolutely no change or a slight regression of balance. And that, again, this chiropractor who invented these clearly was well ahead of his time with his thinking. And he realized, and the key to these insoles is the gradual increase in stimulation right the way through the levels, either 6 or 7 levels of insert to go into the blood. So,
yeah, I had to remind my mum as well, ring her every couple of weeks saying, so have you changed them? Oh, no, I haven't. Put it in there.
What I'll do actually, just quickly, just for a visual purpose, what we're talking about.
What you're talking about.
Yeah, is going through these 6, or in the other variety, the 6 or 7 different levels. They've got them here. And again, if we look at them, as you well know, number 1, quite logically, is the smallest. And then I'm going to just go up through the first 4. So I don't know how clear that comes across, but we can see they gradually get thicker. And then we go up to numbers 5 and 6, which the surface area sort of increases quite significantly. It's longer and it's wider than the others. That's number 4. So number 4 is in fact the thickest. So once you get to that, that's the one, as you say, oh boy, I was really aware of that one. It took me quite a long time to get past number 4.
Me too.
And then I found number 5 and 6 relatively easy compared to that. Other people, it takes weeks to get past number 1, and that's fine. It's a totally independent, individual thing. I mean, I have one crazy situation where a chap with plantar fasciitis put number 1 in on a Tuesday when I got him into the insoles, and his wife actually came to see me on the Friday about something, and I said, how's he getting on? And she said, well, completely pain-free. And I said, wow, that's amazing. Just on level 1. She said, no, he's on level 4. So
Just every day.
Gone 1 through to level 4 in 4 days. I was like, oh my goodness. I said, might be an idea just to slow down. But the point was, he had no pain from the plantar fasciitis, which he'd had a nightmare with for months and months and months. So it is entirely individual how you progress up. I wouldn't recommend going that quickly to anybody, quite frankly, but 1 week, 4 weeks, 6 weeks per level is entirely up to how it feels. And I think
what I found interesting since we last spoke is I've seen some other companies who have looked at socks doing a similar kind of idea, and they've had their own research as well and found a similar thing, that if they put, they're almost like little bands that go around the sock, and again, it improves performance. Yeah. The issue with this is that you need to buy a huge supply of socks, right? Because otherwise, unless you're happy to wear dirty socks for weeks. So from a functionality point of view, for me, I thought, well, it's great that they're finding a similar thing with their own product. That's fantastic. And it's great if you just want to wear one, you always want to wear it. Let's say you've got a marathon coming up, and for whatever reason, you just wanted to wear these supportive socks for that one marathon. It's great. But on a day-to-day usage, that's a very expensive way to do it. And also they wear down fast, don't they? If you're using the supporting capacity. So I think the advantage of these insoles is you just stick them in a shoe. They're comfy as well. I think I've got them in my work shoes. So I thought that's just a bit more functional. You don't have to buy 24 pairs of socks just to try and get the same effect.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And I think one of the points I make to people about these is that, there is a way of making sure that the shoe you buy is the best it can be for you. And what I've started to do a lot is the simple balance test that you and I worked on together, but is to say, try to figure out what your balance is like barefoot, then put a shoe on. If the shoe isn't equal to that balance, then that's not, if it's worse, half as good, don't buy them. That's not a good shoe for you. And then when we put the insoles in, they will make any shoe a better shoe in terms of increasing the stimulus and improving your balance. And I've seen this time and time and time again. And you just literally, with these are the ones here, I've got a full length, but as you know, there's the 3/4 length ones, which are much more amenable to being swapped around from shoe to shoe, because obviously the thing that changes shape is the front part of the shoe, the toe box. So if we don't have anything under that part, then it's plenty of room in the front of the shoe, don't have any rubbing, and it's just a really simple product to switch around from shoe to shoe. So yeah.
And are you generally putting the 3/4 length in more like trainers and stuff like that, or are you just, like you said, just putting them in any shoe that the longer ones don't fit in?
Yeah, it rather depends. I mean, if somebody has got a trainer that has a removable insole, and the full length insole is just an immediate replacement for it, then I would, for a runner, for instance, somebody with a running shoe, or somebody playing golf or tennis regularly, that's a great way because it's much more comfortable. They don't have any chance of anything rubbing or catching. But actually, quite a number of trainers don't have a removable insole. They just have a flat level surface inside, and that's perfect. So the 3/4 length can pop onto that, and then you can move it out into your slippers. You can move it out into your Wellington boots or whatever it is that people are wearing, particularly in the winter. Wellies, I'm sure you've had this conversation with many people. Not great footwear for anything, but actually with these inside, they become better. Not fantastic, but better. And that's the message I try to get across, is that whatever you're going to put your feet into, if you've got a pair of these in there, your balance will be stimulated more. You've got less chance of falling, and your feet will simply function better and pass that message up to the brain.
Yeah, I think one question I've had with patients is them saying, well, I've got orthotics, what would be the difference? And I think it may be a bit of an opinionated view, but for a long time in all fields, we've had this kind of sense of, I know what's right for your body, and I'm going to make your body do what it should. So, your foot should be this shape, and I'm going to make your foot be that shape, and who cares if it's flat as anything? I'm going to force it into the shape because that's better. And in the last few years, I think in all areas of the body, we've started to become a bit more understanding that different people have different body shapes, and that's just fine. It's all about function. So my back doesn't have to be perfectly straight all day long. It should have the ability to move from flex to straight, But if I'm naturally a bit more hunched, that's not the end of the world. Same way if I have a bit of a curve in my back, that's not the worst thing in the world, as long as it has flexibility. And it's the same in a foot. We want a functional foot. And the nice thing with this type of insole is if you have a flat foot, that's fine. That will still be comfortable. It should be comfortable, because we're not taking a foot and saying, right, I know you want to be like this, but I'm going to force you into a position you don't want to be. Because often that means when the patient takes their shoe off, they feel awful, right? Because the foot is constantly, being forced into positions it doesn't want to be in. So I think the nice thing with this kind of insole is it's non-invasive. It's just, here's a bit of support, here's a bit of stimulation. When you walk, you'll be more aware of your feet, you'll tune into where your body is, where your balance is, and you should feel better for it. It's a very safe way to stimulate the foot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like you. I mean, I actually fitted orthotics for many, many years because I didn't know of an alternative. When I came across these, I really loved the idea of effectively training the foot from within the shoe in a really gentle way. It's just like having a little personal trainer sitting in your shoe, just saying, okay, we need you. And your point about being able to go from an arched position into a flat position and come back out is what we're ideally looking for, in varying degrees of arch and varying degrees of flat. But if we can train the foot to function and work a little bit better in a really gentle way, and that's the key to it with these things, because at no point should you experience pain. Awareness of the bump there, absolutely, stimulus, but it's just how much each individual person's body can cope with and process, because it is about information going through. You've talked about the proprioceptive nervous system, and that's kind of like a little information highway. I tend to use an analogy which kind of sort of makes sense, I think, which is that where the bump is and where the plugs go is the light switch. And then the proprioceptive nerves going up to the brain are the wires. Then we've got the control panel or the control board in here, and then more wires going out to the appliances, which will be the muscles. And in order to get the muscles to fire up, we need the switch to be switched on, and we need the wires to be nice and healthy and clean and not being interfered with by joints pinching on them or whatever it might be. And then the control panel obviously needs to be working and fired up, which is, you were talking about concussion. And of course, we can help people with their concussion recovery by improving the amount of information and how that information gets to them. It's got to be a good thing. Okay, listen, Jake, that's fantastic. I really appreciate what you're doing with this. I mean, you're based in Woking or near Woking, is that right?
Yeah, so we're in Woking. My clinic is focused on chronic pain and dizziness. So people who've had, generally not someone who cricked their neck yesterday or sprained their back yesterday. It's normally, you've had it for at least a few weeks or probably more like a few months. You've probably been to see a GP, physio, or probably seen a chiropractor. About 80% of our patients are referrals from other healthcare professionals. So we're kind of the person who's trying to help with that chronic pain when it hasn't got better, and the same with chronic dizziness and balance problems. So yeah, that's the clinic. So we're in Woking, Surrey. Well,
I'm sure you won't object to this, but what I'd like to do is put a very good link on here to your practice, because it's such a specialised area that people, but from those statistics that you've quoted, I mean, it's pretty horrendous, and people need help. So great stuff. Thank you so much, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, that's great. Lovely speaking to you. Lovely speaking to you as always. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.